So I think does economics explain capitalism? Well, economics should explain all types of economic relations, not only capitalism, right? So in principle, the economic relations that were in place in the Middle Ages and feudalism should be explained by economics. It's like saying history. Does history explain capitalism? Well, history should explain capitalism, but all other types of systems that were in place in different points. It should the opposite should not be the case, right? Does economics only explain capitalism? Is it only applied to capitalism? No, that's certainly not. And capitalism, I don't think, is the ultimate economic system, that it's here to stay and cannot be transcended. But then moving on to the second part of the questions, what is capitalism? So my answer right now, it's influence. I just finished reading Piketty's book on capital, not Capital in the 21st Century, the follow-up, Capital and Ideology. And so I have to say I'm heavily influenced by the view of that book, because I just finished reading it. But in there, he makes the argument that capitalism is a special case of something larger called proprietarianism. So proprietarian ideology is the ideology of that any individual can hold property, private property, and this is not something that was always true throughout history. It used to be the case that only certain individuals, and in particular a small number of individuals, so those in both either in the religion helm or in the warrior class, so the noble class, they could have property and nobody else. So the innovation that in principle everyone can have property was an important innovation in moving from feudalism into the new proprietarian age. And with it came also the change in who can dispense justice, right? So it was also the case that only the nobles, the noble class, and the church could dispense this what he calls regalian powers, so the powers of regulate and determine justice between individuals. And so the innovation that came out of that, and this was the birth of societies like from the French Revolution, was that these two things got decoupled, and on the one hand, everyone can have property in principle, and on the other hand, the only actor that can dispense justice is the state. So there's a centralized state that deals with this regalian powers, and there's the possibility that everyone has property. And the two things came together and were very important. They were part of this dissociation and the crumbling of this medieval way of organizing society. But the point is that this was pushed to an extreme, that the property became then something that it's kind of sacralized. It's something that cannot be. It's a kind of a divine right as well. So it's extrapolating from the principle that everyone can have property to the principle that property cannot be touched by the state. Right? It's separated from the state, but it also cannot be touched. The state only deals with criminal justice and so on and so forth, but can never touch on property. And this, of course, then it predates capitalism, but it was ideal for the development of capitalism, because so then what is capitalism is the extrapolation of that logic to the situation where you have organized labor, not organized labor in terms of unions and so on. I'm confusing the terms here. But when you have organized production and large-scale production, and then international trade and international finance, and so what is capitalism is the extension of this proprietarian logic, where the right to hold property is something that should be absolute and untouched by the other aspects of society, to the age of large-scale production and financial flows and international trade. Now, is this the only way in which economics can operate? Far from it. So there's an entire spectrum of so the opposite would be when there is no private property, and all of the property is also owned by the state, that not only regulates the regalian powers, but also the economic relations, and that's the extreme tried under communism, for lack of a better word. But are these two extremes the only possibilities? On the one side, sacrosanct rights of holding any amount of property without any possibility of the state intervening, and on the other side, nobody having the right to hold any property. And just from a mathematical point of view, if you like, it's absurd to think that you only have the two extremes on the possible set. You have everything in between, and in particular, a system where it's embedded in the system that, if necessary, there's going to be a redistribution of property. This is the whole point of progressive taxation and other means. So there's no revolutionary concept in here. It's just exploring what the middle ground is in between those extremes, and there's a lot that can be done in that middle ground. For example, like I said, with progressive taxes, but also with different ways of organizing decision power for whoever holds capital. So this also kind of a divine principle that shareholders should have absolute control of what happens in a company, is not necessarily the case, right? So we have examples, for example, in Germany and in Nordic countries, where there's division of decision power between shareholders and workers in a company. But then, from a point of view of North American or English person say, whoa, what are you saying here? The shareholders don't really own the company they have? Well, yes, they don't have absolute power in deciding on wages and where the company is going to be investing, just because they have the capital. So there's a little bit of a division. Does that mean that you abolish shareholders altogether and everything is a commune? Also not the case, right? So I would say capitalism is one particular possibility, but definitely not the only possibility, and more should be explored.